All right, welcome to another episode of Under the Dome, the home of the Who Dat Nation. I'm your host, Alan Orick. We're coming off a nice bye week. How was your vacation, Sean?
Oh, doing great, man. Doing great. Better than some in our division, but we won't call any names.
Well,
As tonight's episode is named, Bye Bye Vacation, and it's time for a winning streak to start. And we really need to get something started here. And if we're going to make anything out of this season at all, which the jury seems to still be out on, it's going to have to begin this week. Much to the chagrin of our guest this evening, we want to welcome in from the Carolina Cat Chronicles, Mr. Tony Dunn. Mr.
What's
Cat
up, fellas?
Chronicles, the professor. How are
What's
you?
up, guys? Thanks for having me on the show. I watch it all the time. I come to you guys usually to hear other people moan and cry and whine about their team, but it sounds like I'll be doing more of that this evening than anybody.
well, I have to admit, I've watched more Carolina Panthers football over the past 2 weeks than I have probably the past 2 years. I watched that Atlanta game last weekend. Then I watched because that was before the Saints game, and then I watched the Monday night game last night. And unlike the rest of America, who probably went to bed early, I actually stayed up and watched it all the way to the bitter end.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Okay, first things first, Tony. I want to ask you, in terms of your Carolina your Carolina Panthers. Bear with me. Of Cam moving forward to next week, is there any information on his condition as of yet?
Yeah, I think everybody's trying. Well, they need some optimism in Carolina right now. So early reports are that he will be a go, or he could be a go this week. You don't know with the concussion protocol. They're so weird about it. And they don't, they know so little about concussions, I think, and the symptoms, and if they're diagnosed properly. Like, as soon as they say you have a concussion, they just are very cautious with you. Cam Newton was out riding a Segway, though, yesterday, so that's got to be good.
I can remember a year ago when we went into that first matchup against Carolina. I believe that was at Carolina last year, the first matchup, when Drew Brees was out and we went with McCown. I can remember that Kuechly, if I remember correctly, Kuechly was out in the concussion protocol at that time, wasn't he? And wound up missing I want to say about 2 to 3 games with that.
Yeah, it was 3 weeks last year with Kuechly. And when he got his concussion, he was kind of flopping around like a fish, and he didn't know where he was at. We were at that game. That was in the opening. That was the opener against Jacksonville. Yeah. But, Cam, when he got hit in that Atlanta game, I mean, I think he was knocked out like temporarily and somehow kept his feet and got the 2-point conversion. Crazy. We love to have him back, but having him alone isn't the answer to all the problems.
That's my question.
Sure.
What would you say is the biggest problem with the Carolina Panthers right now? Is it just losing Josh Norman, or the problem's a lot deeper than that?
No, the problems are far deeper than Josh Norman. While that's the easiest one to see because the roster has to reflect it with 3 rookies. And that we have no veteran presence in the secondary, and then guys are torching us for 300 yards. Obviously, that's a critical weakness. But, for the Carolina Panthers, all the strength always comes with offensive and defensive lines. And both right now are playing poorly. The offensive line has got injuries with Michael Orr, who is suffering he missed his second game with a concussion. Who would have known that we would have missed Michael Orr so much? He's not he's average at best, and he's a terrible run blocker. But the other guys that we have are just horrendous, and that is Mike Remmers, who we've moved over from the right tackle to the left. And it's just false start galore. Even the good players aren't playing that well. So on the offensive line, you're lacking continuity. You're already got guys that were average, and then you're trying to test the depth of the line, and it's not a good thing. On the defensive line, the names are there, but the production isn't. Right now, our leading sack guy is Kyle Love, and he's only been on the team 2 weeks. So wow. Coney Ely, a bust. Kwan Short is getting double teamed, and Charles Johnson is old.
What about Star Latui? What's going on with him?
I expected him to have a great year this year because he's going to be in a contract year. And but he's kind of typically a run stuffer more than he is a pass disruptor. So he doesn't get a lot of the credit that maybe some of the other guys get. That they don't have the sexy role or whatever, but he looks lean. I saw him out in pass coverage or something weird in the last game, but not enough pressure. And I think when you have defensive ends that the tackles can manage alone, and you don't have to worry about pushing that guard to help on an inside move at all, they really have a lot easier time lining up against the two defensive tackles when you got two guards and a center to work on them.
My God, it sounds like us. It sounds like us. It was always going to have the movable object meets the resistible force come Sunday. I mean, really. But go ahead with your question here, Sean.
I was just going to ask how my man Vernon's doing.
Oh, he's out with a high ankle sprain, and they put him on that short-term IR where you get, I guess it's 6 weeks or something like that, or 6 games.
It's 6 games. 6 games. I just practice 2 weeks.
Yeah,
because we have the same thing with our number one pick, Sheldon Rankins. Our number one pick's out with that, and he won't be in this week. Whenever he does decide to show, can practice, they have 2 weeks, and then you can activate him. So. We have the same.
I just got an update from a buddy of ours, John Pinto, our director of media relations.
Mr. Pinto.
He said that just coming across the wire right now, Eric Harris is out for the season with an ACL.
Eric Harris. Wait.
I don't know who that is.
Of the Jets?
No, our safety.
Oh,
Delvin Bro's buddy.
I'm like, okay, all right.
He must stink.
Well, it wasn't Drew Brees, but come on.
Yeah, I'm thinking the linebacker of the Jets. It didn't click to me because it's a different.
This is a Saints show.
Yes, I know.
Well, Tony's just looking at me like, hey, wasn't the Carolina Panther.
I know. I don't.
I've got
like that. Kurt Coleman.
I've got my head wrapped around the Carolina Panthers roster right now. So I'm like going, who?
Okay,
He's not on the Carolina Panthers. So there we go. Nope. Okay, now that makes sense.
Lucky him.
For those, just for the record, I want to clear it up for everybody. Just for those who aren't aware, Tony is part of the group that sponsors our show, the Fan First Productions. They made it. They were the ones who, in their infinite wisdom, believed in our product so much that they got behind us and showed a lot of faith in us and gave us the opportunity to do what we do. And we thank them so much for that opportunity. And as I say, this is one of our major sponsors. But we journalistic integrity if we gave him a slack because he's a Carolina Panthers guy. So
yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you had just as hard a time saying that with a straight face as I do. So,
Yeah.
okay, so I need to know about this.
So
What I want to ask
we're
you
gonna
guys
put
about the
product
Saints.
placement out. So okay,
Yeah.
what about the Saints?
I need to know about this. Is how can your defense be so bad?
It's
Injuries.
it's much like what you're describing. You have injured players who are your frontline people. Then you have average to below average backups coming in to take their place. And when you have that, and you don't have pass rushes on the end, and you're expecting your defensive tackles to get pushed up the middle, and you don't have depth in your secondary, you expose yourself to a lot of yardage and a lot of big plays. I do have.
Well, I think that we had coming out of camp, going into the season, we had a little bit, or what in normal circumstances would have been considered reasonable depth. But at the same time, when your depth is consisted of undrafted free agents and rookies, it is what it is. And if you roll the dice and you take your chances on that, if you get down to the point where these are the guys that you're having to put on the field for whatever reason, be that injury or whatever, if you roll the dice and take your chances with these guys, you're going to get what you get. I mean,
Well,
you're not going to have experience out there, and experience is going to come at a very high price, and it's going to be trial by fire.
Aside from that, you lost your top 5 cornerbacks that you were expecting to go into the season with. Now, Bro may come back sooner than later, but the other ones aren't coming back. You lose those 5. You got your starting defensive end is Paul Kruger, who got cut from the Browns, and he got picked up a week before the regular season starts. That's a lot of your problems, and you lose your number 1 draft pick, who's supposed to be your starting defensive tackle. And your linebackers are not. One linebacker is very good. The other ones are just average to below average right now. That's why you're going to have another historically bad defense. And there's a little bit of hope. There's a glimmer of hope that you're going to get Bro back from his broken leg. You're going to get Rankins back from his broken leg. And one day, for about 45 of the 59 minutes we play football, you're going to have Donnell Ellaby out there playing linebacker. You might see some improvement in the defense, but I mean,
we're hoping to get him for a national anthem just once.
I mean, he's a guy that when he's out there, he's your best linebacker. He can run sideline to sideline. He's instinctive. He can smell out plays. He can make tackles, but he can't stay healthy. When he's injured, he's out for 3 and 4 weeks at a time, if not longer. So what good does he really do you? Because he's always injured.
Ellerby is by far the best linebacker that we have. If you've taken everything into consideration, coverage, instincts, like he was just saying, Ellerby is by far the best. But also getting back to what he just said, if he's not on the field, he's not. No matter how good he is, he's not doing you any good as a team. Now you go from Ellerby
to Michael Marty.
I would say.
Oh, I was going to say when Ellerby is not playing, you go to Michael Marty out there as a starter. That's a special teams linebacker. So that's what you're really playing with. But
I would say the best after Donnell Ellerby would, without a doubt, be Robertson.
He's a guy. Go ahead.
I find it just interesting to see this when what stunned me with the Carolina Panthers is that when you have guys that were in the starting role who were just okay, they weren't fantastic. And then the drop off from a guy to their backup is so distinct and noticeable. I'm just still surprised to see that, and that is, I always thought, man, we need to make the roster bigger in the NFL and allow some more players out there. And
absolutely.
So you're not cutting everybody, but it doesn't sound like there are quality starters just everywhere. You know what I mean? And the drop off is significant.
To me,
in today's league of specialization, 53 players is not a big enough roster.
Well, it's 45 on game day.
Yeah, they got a
That's not big enough because you got guys that are only going on the field on third downs if it's this far to go, and if it's maybe a passing down, and if this and if that. You got guys that are suiting up to play 3 or 4 plays a whole damn game. And if that's what it is, what it is. If that's what it is, then fine. But you don't have enough roster space for the people that you need. I've never believed that.
Well, here's
I'm sorry,
the
Alan,
thing.
go ahead.
I was going to say, here's the thing for me, and I blame the new CBA agreement. A friend of mine on Facebook today went on a rant about football and how bad it is and how diluted the product is. And she's referring to a lot of things we're just talking about with the lack of depth. Or if you get a few injuries, which every team does, but you get a few injuries, and suddenly now you have this drop-off of quality players. And what's happened with the CBA, and with the way they changed the cap, you have players like a Drew Brees, like an Andrew Luck, making a lot of money, okay? Then you've got the rookies on the bottom who are the cheap players because we've now have a structured salary for rookies. That the middle class players, the kind of players that you like to have on your team, you know, in the Saints case, the Scott Fajitas, the Scott Shanleys, the guys who aren't going to be your studs, but they're quality starters. And I'm sure they have the same thing in Carolina. Those players got squeezed out because they become too expensive to keep. Yep. You know, you have to allocate so much money to your star players that it's a lot cheaper just to fill your roster up with rookies, undrafted free agents, and guys who are like second-year kind of players that may have gotten cut from another team. And that's what you've got now is your depth. Your drop-off from your starter to your second-string guy is a lot worse than it was, say, 5-10 years ago. And I think that's what I see. And I think you're seeing that in the quality of play. Because
and your top tier teams that you see, I was just saying that your top tier teams that you see competing for the Super Bowl every year, your Seattle Seahawks, your New England Patriots, are the teams where the drop off second team is less than it is for teams like, say, New Orleans or Carolina in this case.
Well, I kind of put New England in a separate category because Bill Belichick has a machine in there. I don't know what he does, but he has a machine with players.
Bill Belichick is the devil.
But you know, you take a team like Denver and look how Denver fell apart. Now, granted, it was just a quarterback, and that quarterback had never started before, and then you put a rookie in there who's never started before, and the difference in the quality of quarterback play was astounding. And it wasn't like Denver's starting quarterback was doing a whole heck of a lot to begin with, but he was making the plays that Paxton Lynch did not make against Atlanta. And you know, they couldn't afford to have a quality backup, you know, unless you get a Mark Sanchez or some sort of retread. You know, you can't have a good veteran backup anymore. That they're going to be looking for another starting job somewhere. They're looking for money, and you can't afford them.
Tony's sitting there grinning because, I mean, just from right here, I see him grinning, and that looks to me like somebody that's, hey, we've already played Denver. Y'all have no idea what you're in store for.
I don't want to play them ever again.
You know, I was amazed. Well, we can talk about Atlanta all evening, but I'd rather not. I'd rather have a root canal than give Atlanta any props. But I have to say, I was shocked at the way Tampa was able to run the football against Carolina.
That's a great observation.
With an ex-Falcons running back, I mean, a guy who wasn't even good enough to make the Falcons. It was a guy who was on the street a few days
ago.
the
Bears, I believe.
Or the Bears, yeah.
I mean, so, yeah, Jacquizz Rodgers, who, by the way, I picked up in fantasy before.
Well, he's not playing Carolina again, I don't think.
I know, but I needed a running back last night, and it worked.
Good move.
Look, here's the thing is I've always said this with the Carolina Panthers defense is that our defense, what it requires is there's two elements that we really need for it to do to be successful and to be as shut down and dominant as you've seen in the past. Number one is to be able to generate pressure when you rush 4. When we start having to blitz, and we've had to blitz like 60% more than we did last year because we can't get any pressure. The savvy quarterbacks, the smart ones, they just throw at the blitz. And that's what Matt Ryan did to us. Wherever the guy was coming from, he just threw it to that side of the field to wherever the receiver was. And he had the man-on-man matchup, and usually his guys were winning. So you got to be able to get that pressure. But the other thing that is not given credit for with this Carolina Panthers or this scheme is we have to stop the run with that front 4 as well. If we have to start trotting up Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, or Shaq Thompson into the box to help with run support because the guys can't get it done without them, what that does is it really limits the greatest asset of our defense, which is our linebacker core, who we allow to in an ideal world, we want to have Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis sit in the middle of the field and react. Like no game planning. Every now and then you'll send them on the double A gap blitz or whatever. But for the most part, they're just going to look at the quarterback, and if it's a run play, they're going to react to the run. If it's a passing play, they're going to react in that way. But when they have to be schemed into a run-stopping attack, it takes that away, and then people can pick on us.
Yeah. I
completely agree.
I watched, there was one play, it was early in the game. I thought John Gruden was going to lose his mind when he saw it. It was it looked like a pulling guard play, and it was executed the exact way you would draw up on the board. The guard kicked out, and he came across, nailed the defensive tackle. The fullback hits the hole, and he hits Kuechly dead center, puts Kuechly on his backside, and Rodgers cuts right off that block and goes upfield where there's nobody there. And it was the end zone view from the offensive perspective. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe, first off, that pulling guard kick out that defensive tackle so easily, and then the fullback flattening Kuechly. I was amazed because that just didn't happen last year. Last year, if they tried a trap play, Kuechly was in that hole so fast that he was there for the handoff, and it wasn't happening, and I think you're probably going to see a heavy dose of Mark Ingram this Sunday.
Especially you guys can't ever do that. There's never you did that for one season and never went back.
Yeah, well, you don't have Deuce McAllister anymore. That's probably the biggest reason why. Yeah, we do like to throw the ball. The ball. That's a given.
We've got this guy that we've had for a little while. Maybe you've heard of him. His name, he wears number 9. His name is Breeze.
I know how he is, but a lot of pressure. You ask him to throw 400 yards every week, and Ingram had that year where you guys assigned him to the extension. That 1 year, I don't know, was that Peyton's first year back from his suspension or whatever? Where it seemed like
that was 2 years ago in his contract year.
Yeah,
because the whole offensive game plan seemed to funnel and run through Mark Ingram more that year, and you go, I can't believe Sean Payton is calling this. And then back to same old Sean Payton when anybody tries to draft those guys for their fantasy football team.
well,
Tony, let me ask you this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
Oh, I was just going to say, you should know by now, the only two players that forever that worth drafting for the Saints in fantasy football are Drew Brees, Marcus Colston for a long time, and then Jimmy Graham. And after that, don't draft anybody else because 1 week they're going to light up your scoreboard. Next week they may catch one pass. So I never touched as much as I love the Saints. I think the only people I've ever drafted from the Saints in fantasy football were I think I drafted Drew Brees 1 year, and I had Jimmy Graham his contract year. And that
I got Brandon Cooks on my team this year. I need him. Well, he might be great against the Panthers.
He may do well.
The one Saint that I would say would be worth their weight in gold in fantasy football right now would be Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
Tony, let me ask you this question. Actually, I have two questions for you. First and foremost, in light of your Carolina Panthers, do you think it's more of the league catching up with what you guys did a year ago, or your team coming back off of what, if that makes any sense? Has your team changed, or has the league just caught up with you guys and what you were doing a year ago?
I think it's our team. Like, I mean, I want to give a lot of credit to Denver's defense. I want to give a lot of credit to Minnesota's defense and Atlanta's offense. But at the same time, every time I never want to give any credit to the Atlanta Falcons. But
there you go.
But what I mean is this.
Think alike.
I feel like at the end of the day, like if we had to change anything in a game, it would be something about our own team, not about the other team. You know, I don't feel like anybody we shouldn't be being outclassed. I don't think they caught up with us. I think that everything went right last year, and we were very fortunate. We were really good. We evaded the injury bug. That was one thing is – injuries they really tell the tale of a season to come. And, right now our starting quarterback's out. Nothing's really going right. But I really think this is a personnel problem. I think that our GM just counted too much on things going as well as they did last year, particularly on the offensive line and the defensive line. And I know hindsight's 2020 and all of this, but Mike Remmers was terrible in the Super Bowl, and he struggled late in the season. Michael Orr was on skates in the Super Bowl. I just kind of I felt like, yeah, they played well. You don't want to cut them because you don't want to be mean, and they didn't, lose their jobs. But, it would have helped to have an upgrade there, or at least a guy that has some experience behind them. And then likewise, you're expecting Coney Ely. Maybe our general manager just got too high in the Super Bowl about some of the things like what he saw, K'Wan Short, Coney Ely. And if you thought those guys are going to get 20 sacks together and they haven't gotten you anything in the beginning, he miscalculated. And then the secondary issue, it's just been a mess. And I think it's probably 75% personnel.
Okay.
Well, it's funny because I'm sorry, Sean. I was going to say it's funny because I think there's this balance that all GMs go through because we kind of went through this in 2010 after we won the Super Bowl. They're afraid to mess with the chemistry, that they think they've got the right winning chemistry. So if you make some changes, thinking you're going to that's what's going to get you over the hump. That all of a sudden, you've kind of screwed up your team now. That you've actually gotten worse than better when you try to make improvements. So they're afraid to touch anything. And I think that's probably what you see in Carolina.
That's exactly it.
That overriding train of thought is you don't want to fix it unless it's broken. But in the National Football League, if you don't address it before it's broken, then you're costing your organization time to fix it after it's broken.
Yeah, you can't let it fully break. You can't let it fully break. I do want to ask you guys something about, what did you guys think about coming off the bye week? The Panthers are spiraling the toilet, and then the line comes out today, and the Panthers are favored by 3. How does that make? I mean, come on. How did they even put that line out there? It should have been a pick 'em.
It should have been.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it should have been, because a home team normally gets a 3-point favor. So they're actually thinking the Saints are going to lose by 6. I mean, if you really look at that schedule, I mean, that line. And they're really assuming, I guess, that, that Cam Newton's going to be back, that the Saints defense is not going to be able to stop them. So it's going to have to be a track meet. And not getting off the field against the Falcons the last time they were at home on 3rd down, they think that's the way that it's going to keep Drew Brees off the field. I'll be surprised that line stays at 3. I expect it probably to drop down to probably 1.5 by Sunday, by the noon kickoff. The Saints don't have the dome field advantage anymore, because
you guys actually play worse in the dome over the last 2 years.
Yes. I mean, 2011 and 2013, you're undefeated at home, and then you've pretty much been mediocre ever since. And a lot of that has to do with the offense not being as explosive as it used to be. It's not a machine. But the other thing has to do with the defense just not stopping anybody. All they used to have to do is get at least 1 or 2 stops on 3rd down, or get at least a couple of turnovers, and the Saints would just start rolling teams. They would get that. They get the ball, they kick off, get the ball in the last 2 minutes of a ball game, score a touchdown, get the kickoff in the second half, score another touchdown, and now a team is 14 points behind when they were, or 17 points behind, where they may have only been 3 points behind. And you just don't see that anymore in the Superdome. So,
Alan made reference to it a little while ago, but everything we focused a lot tonight on the Panthers team and their shortcomings and their what's gone wrong with their season. But Alan jokingly made reference, but it's very realistic at the same time. Everything that's going wrong for you guys already has gone wrong for us this season as well. For us to open as a 3-point underdog on the line at home, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. And we have no room but up to go. I think that there's a lot of optimism that maybe we've gotten some players healthy, that some of these positions where injuries have decimated the quality starts that we had in mind from training camp and from the preseason, those positions that we thought we had sewn up, only to find out that somebody got hurt and they're screwed. Hopefully this bye week is going to do some positive work in that regard. But this is good. This is going to be a dogfight. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, the last 2 games, and we're just going to go by last season, the last 2 games the Saints played against Carolina, it really came down to 2 plays. It came down to the last-second interception by Josh Norman against Brandon Cooks in Carolina.
What an amazing play that was. Oh, my goodness.
Right.
I know that it tore your heart out, but, he was open. He was open.
Right. The ball was just a little underthrown, which was just enough for Norman to make that incredible catch. And then the other one is the 4th down play to Greg Olsen. Cam Newton is rolling out, and he's running out of space real fast. We've got the rush on him. He's going to get hit, and he lobs that ball out. And, Tony, you can argue with me all day long about this. I swear that ball hit the ground because I was there. But Olsen catches the ball right there on 4th down when, and that saved the game because the Saints would have gotten the ball back, was got the game with a win, and they didn't get it. So, it really came down to 2 plays, and I think the greatest compliment came from Luke Kuechly when they asked him what happened with the defense. He said, I'll tell you what happened. Drew Brees is what happened. So, I mean, it's the game will be that close. I don't. That's why I say it's going to be 1.5 points. 1.5 points. I still think they probably still think Carolina's defense is better than our offense, and our defense can't stop anybody. And I think
I disagree. Like, I'm going to take the Saints on this one, and until the Panthers give me any reason to hope for something. Right now, I don't see this team getting any better, and now you're going to be talking about going against the guy who I acknowledge as an elite quarterback. Matt Ryan, I think he's like crap, and some of that, a lot of that is biased. But the fact is that I know Drew Brees, and I know he's great. And if you give him an opportunity, he's going to dissect. I mean, he's going to take these young rookies apart. And the thing that concerns me a lot about this, Alan, is that last year in that game where Josh Norman had that pick, you guys came in. I was listening to one of the Saints podcasts, the Happy Hour podcast, the week before, and they were talking about how Streif, or whatever his name was, the right tackle.
Yeah, Zach Streif. That's right, Zach Streif.
He couldn't stop the week before he got just embarrassed, just beat like 7 times. And then they come and play Carolina, and we can't get a sack against you guys. Like, we had no pressure. So that shows you what happens. If you can't get pressure, guys are going to run the ball on you, and then you can even give whichever McCown that is an opportunity to beat you.
Yeah, that was Luke. Bro. That's the that's the good one. So
Luke's always good for 1 game a year.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, I know, Tony, you're going to have to go soon. But one last question before you go. Jonathan Stewart, what is the story on him? Is he going to make an appearance in this game? Because that really affects your read option if Cam's in there, but Jonathan Stewart isn't.
Yeah, I'm going to say no. Like, I haven't heard any timetable for him coming back. I think they said he was running in the pool and pulling the sled some last week. With his hamstring, I mean, he's had these lingering injuries before. I could see them playing it safe, but you're right. You nailed it, is that for some reason, Cam and Stewart can run that read option. They have a good chemistry together on that with each other.
Certainly
while
do.
Cameron Artis-Payne, who doesn't have that, who I love as a running back, and I think has been trashed by Panther fans and not given an adequate shot. He just doesn't have that same feel. It just doesn't look smooth. A lot of times they're kind of bumping into each other when they're doing it. And, that's the one thing is we didn't call that play too much last year, but when we did, it was just so deadly. And it really, that limits, that makes it so your defensive end can bear down a little bit more when he doesn't have to hold up for that. And right now, this is the thing, is that teams are just pinning their ears back against the Panthers and rushing off the edge every time. And even our running backs, they can't ship. Greg Olsen, God love him, he's amazing. He had a great game last night. He's the best, arguably the best Panther right now. He can't block.
Most consistent.
Yeah, he just can't block.
He's the most consistent.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, because, I've argued with people on Saints forums. I said, look, you've got 2 types of tight ends. You've got your pass catchers and you've got your blockers. Very rarely do you have one who can do both. And
there's only been one ever.
Yeah.
There's only been one ever, and it's Tony Gonzalez.
Well, I wouldn't even say Tony Gonzalez. I would go back, into the 70s and the 60s when you're talking about, people like John Mackey and Mike Ditka and people like that.
Right.
Because most of them are just pure pass catchers.
Yep.
Especially these former basketball players. And, that was a big knock on Jimmy Graham was, the guy can't pass block, the guy can't block. I'm like, but he catches touchdowns.
That's not what you have them for.
Right.
That's not what you have them for.
Touchdowns are what wins you games, So it's just, but yeah.
Tony,
I appreciate that.
Tony, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. Tell everybody on our audience how they can follow you and your work, brother.
You can always check out the latest Panther news and opinions from the fan perspective at CarolinaCatChronicles.com and follow me on Twitter at @cat_chronicles. I can't guarantee I'll be nice to a Saints fan, but it will be fun. The banter back and forth, though.
Like I said,
well, I can vouch for that.
Yeah, like I said, it's the resistible force meeting the movable object. So, it's going to be a hell of a game on Sunday.
All right, you guys have a good night. I'll talk to you later on this evening, actually.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Well,
that's always fun.
Yeah, it is. We're going to have to get our Falcon fan back in here because we didn't get him for the game. I think he was preparing for the worst, and he's now got the best. So his head's probably this big, So
yeah, I'm gonna get Josh.
The screen won't be enough to fill it.
I'm gonna get Josh before it's over with. You big time me, buddy. We're gonna nail your hide to the wall.
Oh, absolutely.
What I was gonna, one thing I was gonna ask Tony, but we didn't have time for. Maybe we'll get to it. And for those who aren't aware, and I meant to make this announcement at the beginning of the show. I just didn't think about it. Following tonight's show of Under the Dome, Alan and I both will be joining Tony, our guest that just signed off, and his partners on the Carolina Cat Chronicles podcast, and we will be their guests.
Yeah, so we'll be under the microscope. They'll be asking us, what's wrong with the Saints? So it should be fun tonight.
I've asked this question before, Alan, and I'll ask you rather than ask Tony. Once again, a week later, we're now, 5 weeks into the season. Mm-hmm. Believe that Atlanta is the team to beat in the NFC South.
For now. A lot can happen between now and the end of the season. I'm not saying that Atlanta probably won't win the division, but Atlanta's done this before. They've started 5-0, they've started 7-0, and collapsed later on. They've even had the number 1 seed a couple of times in the playoffs and still lost. That defense is not that good. For whatever reason, they just beat the hell out of Denver's offensive line last week. And
I'll go a step further. I don't think they're good at all. And you take into consideration now that they're without Witherspoon and 1 or 2 others. They're in even worse shape than they were when they played us. And I think that they were just maybe this much above what we were in that game.
What's going to happen is they're going to run into a team that can move the ball in that defense. I mean, I still don't think they've stopped the draw play yet for the Saints. The Saints played them again. They still couldn't stop the draw with Mark Ingram. The reason why we lost that game is we couldn't get off the field on 3rd down. If you can't get off the field on 3rd down, they're going to score every time. And that's exactly what happened. And I've always pointed to 2 or 3 plays that were the difference in the ball game. The pass interference call when it was deep in their end zone on 3rd down, that was a key play. And then on 4th and 1, the play that they killed Stephon Anthony on with that little dump off pass to I think it was Coleman, the running back Coleman. And that's part of the reason why Atlanta's winning, because they've got Kyle Shanahan's got this thing going with the running backs right now where they're both running and receiving and doing a lot of damage. They're beating the one-on-one matchup with the linebackers. And, that's what's got them winning ball games. If you take the running game away from Matt Ryan and you take those running backs out in the passing game, you really have got Atlanta where you want them again, where Matt Ryan's going to have to stay in that pocket for 3 and 5 seconds and wait for Julio Jones and wait for those other receivers to get, Sanu and the rest to get open. And that's when your pass rush should be able to get them. Now, whether the Saints can do that or anybody else, I'm not outside of Minnesota. I don't know. I would say the Vikings are the team to beat, but I've seen that team before too. I saw a team from 1987 to 1992 in New Orleans. That's who they are. There are a great defense with great special teams and an offense that's ball control based, where the quarterback just manages the game and doesn't make mistakes. And he's going to run to it.
And if something happens to Sam Bradford, I sincerely believe if Sam Bradford for some reason is taken out of the equation, that team's gone.
I would go one step further. Again, if that defense cannot stop a team for whatever reason, and Bradford has to get into a scoring match or a shootout, they can't do it. He won't be able to keep up to that. They don't have the weapons to do that. But the thing is that defense is damn good, and it's because Mike Zimmer is a defensive coach, and he's doing exactly what Jim Mora did. To an extent, he's doing what Carolina did last year, where it's the defense just keeps making plays that keeps the offense in the game, keeps the score under 20 points, does all the little things it takes to play that kind of ball control conservative offense and get it to work. And they're doing this without Adrian Peterson, which is even more impressive. So, but
well, for now, it is what it is, and as far as I'm concerned, at this point in time, 5 weeks into the season, Minnesota is absolutely the team that everyone should be aiming at, because they're the best in the NFC at this point.
Yeah, and because of that, they have a home field advantage in that new stadium and everything else. So it's amazing what winning does. Winning gives you an unbeatable home field advantage. Seattle, it works in Seattle, worked in Kansas City. So, which brings us
in New Orleans in 2000.
Yeah, it worked 2009, 2011, 2013. We were undefeated at home in those 2 years. But here we go. We're going to hit what was supposed to be the toughest part of the schedule for us: Carolina, Kansas City, Seattle, San Francisco, and Denver, and Carolina one more time. Well, we've already kind of beat up Carolina, so they're not what we thought they were. Kansas City, great ribs. Love to tailgate that place one day. But Kansas City, you don't know what you're going to get out of them, because here they play the Jets, get 6 turnovers, win that ball game, then go to Pittsburgh, who got blown out by the Eagles the week before. They get blown out. Andy Reid is the Les Miles of clock management in coaching. And I don't know what you're going to get out of that, because I think if you can get Kansas City, again, this all has to do with our defense being able to get off the field on third down, which is a big if. Sure. But Kansas City, I think, is one of those teams that if you put the pressure on them and they feel like they've got to score every time to keep up with you, the game won't be as difficult as you think it may be, even in Arrowhead, which is a tough field to play in. We'll see how we do this week against Carolina and see who starts coming back before I start making predictions. But we're seeing now with Carolina, Kansas City, San Francisco has now made a quarterback switch. I just saw a great meme. on third down, they should stop playing the national anthem because Colin Kaepernick will take a knee or sit down on third down. So I think that's a great idea. But yeah, the 49ers are not the 49ers of the Jim Harbaugh era. So your two toughest games coming up are the Seattle Seahawks in New Orleans and the Denver Broncos.
In New Orleans.
In New Orleans again. And the Broncos, what a difference in a quarterback. Paxton Lynch comes in for the quarterback. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but the quarterback. Simeon, thank you. Who had never started a game, had only one pass or one snap, I think, to his credit when he came in that first game against the Panthers on kickoffs Thursday night. But you saw a huge difference, and for whatever reason, Atlanta's lousy pass rush could get to Lynch. He took 4 sacks. It made the Falcons have been ripping on Vic Beasley as a draft bust. He got 4 sacks, I think, in that game. So the game again, it's going to be week to week. Who are the tough teams? We don't know. This gauntlet,
it's just going to
be with a gauntlet you think it is.
It's just going to be which team shows up on Sunday, and that holds
Exactly.
true not only for the opposition but for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are we beginning with Carolina this Sunday? Are we going to see the team that laid an egg in New York against the Giants, or are we going to see the team that came out and fought the Raiders?
We're
going to have to play a better brand of football than what we've been playing, obviously.
We have to play 4 quarters of football on both sides of the ball. Sure. We have not done that yet this season. We played three and a half quarters against the Raiders. That was the closest we came to playing 4 quarters of football was against the Raiders, and it fell apart in the end.
I think in all fairness, as far as the Raiders game goes, I think a lot of that falling apart came with the Delvin Breaux injury and just not being prepared for having some.
I understand that, but Delvin Breaux didn't give up a 75-yard run, and that was one of the big plays. And I say 75 yards, I think it was 55 yards actually, but the big run, and it was just a collapse all over the place. And
sure.
Yes, Delvin Breaux going down was a major concern because now you're pushing Ken Crawley into a starting job, and the Ken Crawley that's playing this Sunday is better than the Ken Crawley that played against the Raiders. But still, you have to get more consistency. I was going to say that the Chargers game, we played badly for 3 quarters and 54 minutes of the game. It was the last 6 minutes of the game that they actually started playing good football. So we can get those 6 minutes. We can get the first 54 minutes from the Raiders game and the 6 minutes we got from the Chargers game. We actually might have a good game. We could have a good game there. But so do we have a question of the week? Do I really want to hear this question of the week? Or do you want it? We only have about 5 minutes left. So
the only question that we got was from Kevin Jagno. They wanted to know when will Joe Vitt be fired. But I think probably when Sean Payton walks out the door for the last time, Joe Vitt will carry his luggage out and then come back in to be the interim coach in his absence.
Yes. That is what's going to happen.
I think Joe Vitt is probably the one person in the whole organization that has the treasure trove of compromising photos, cassette recordings of inappropriate behavior.
In all seriousness, and I tried to find it. There's a Daily Comet, which is a Homer newspaper. There's a Daily Comet article, but I could not pull it up because they don't archive their stories, but I wanted to get it so badly. It was from 2005 when the Saints retained Winston Moss as linebacker coach, and it was a editorial basically ripping that decision that they had Winston Moss because, and tell me if this doesn't sound familiar, he's never developed a linebacker. We've had all kinds of draft picks come in as linebackers, and none of them any good. The linebackers have stunk ever since Jim Haslett came in. On and on, they're not the dome patrol and all this stuff. And I said, it's almost verbatim when I read about Vitt. And that's the issue. It's a problem the Saints have had for 30 years with the linebackers, except for Mark Fields and Winford Tubbs. Pat Swilling was the last linebacker they drafted. Actually was a Pro Bowl player. Ronaldo Turnbull was a defensive end. They turned into a linebacker, had one good season. But it's the first player this team ever drafted was a linebacker, Les Kelly, and they converted him to a fullback. We've had problems forever drafting linebackers, and I don't care who the coach is. I don't care who the GM is. For whatever reason, we cannot figure out a good linebacker, and I don't know why. I really don't. I think Bum Phillips is the last one who could consistently draft good linebackers, and then he drafts Alvin Tolles in the first round of 1985's draft, and the guy never sees the field, blows out his knee his rookie year, never plays again. But, I don't know. I don't know why we cannot get good linebackers, and I'm telling you, it's a much, much deeper problem than Joe Vitt. It's something with this franchise. I don't know. That's my reaction when it comes to Joe Vitt. Joe Vitt, Greg McMahon, and Bill Johnson, the terrible threesome. I hear about it all the time, and I'm telling you.
Don't we all?
Yeah, I'm telling you, if they fired
Joe
him
Vitt
tomorrow,
Joe Vitt seems to be the when all else fails, blame Joe Vitt.
Yeah, Joe Vitt, honestly, is the guy who is Sean Payton's right-hand man. He's the one that makes the schedule out for the practices. He's the one that organizes all these things. He's the one that gets he's a sounding board for Sean. Sean treasures his advice about everything. And he's the screaming guy. If you watch the highlights of Super Bowl, 44, who is he screaming at when he's talking about Dallas Clark has 122 yards right now? That's not let their best player beat us. That's a sin. He's yelling at Vitt. Okay? And Vitt just takes it. He needs a guy to scream at on the sideline. And
the banner in the practice facility that hung there for so long, do your job.
Mm-hmm.
Picture of Peyton grimacing at the camera.
Yeah.
He was looking at Vitt when that picture was taken.
Sure.
Joe Vitt told that.
Yeah, I mean, Vitt has a role on the team, and he's not the only linebackers coach. They've got a guy who actually coaches the linebackers, and Vitt's kind of like the supervisor, of the whole practice, along with Sean Payton. He's the extra set of eyes for Payton. So it's when you look at this coaching staff, they've got like 20 coaches on the team. You can't just point to one guy and say, okay, he's the problem. The pass rush expert is actually Brian Young, so it's not Bill Johnston. And if you're going to blame Bill Johnston for the bad pass rush, you got to also give him credit for the Pro Bowl type numbers that Cam Jordan put up 93 and Junior Gillette put up at 93. And a guy who used to be the defensive line coach in 2008 is now the head coach at LSU, Coach Orgeron. He came in, and he's the one that told the Saints to draft Cedric Ellis because he coached Cedric Ellis at USC. So, it's the problems. There's a lot of hands in these failures and these weaknesses and stuff, and replacing the scouting department, replacing the coach, replacing the guy who does the picking now with Jeff Ireland. That's a good first step, and I think let's get better players on this team, then see what happens from there. Because Craig Robertson, obviously, you can't possibly credit the Cleveland Browns coaching staff, his 5 different coaches he's probably had in 5 years. you can't just credit that guy for developing Craig Robertson into a good player. You have to give some credit to Vitt for that. So, okay, we're gonna have to cut out of here because
yes, we
we're
are.
gonna be
We're
on
up
that next
against it.
podcast. Yes. Next week we dissect what went right and what went wrong against the Carolina Panthers. Hopefully, we are celebrating a win. I'd like to get to 2-4 and just bury the Panthers season at 1-5. That would be very appealing to me. 1-6, actually. No, they're 1-5. They'd be 1-5. And let us start facing this gauntlet with a winning streak.
Yeah, we absolutely need it, and then take it as it comes. I mean, from week to week, these next 5, well, actually, 5 opponents. From one week to the next, they look like different teams anyway. We'll just take them as they fall.
Hey, Seattle's got Russell Wilson's got a strained MCL, an ankle sprain, and God knows what else. He may not even be starting by the time we play them. So who knows what happens? What team shows up that day? But anyway, let's just focus on Carolina this week. Get the win.
That's right.
This game's a home game, so let's restart a dome domination again. Until next time, join us for Under the Dome. Same bat time, same bat channel, and you'll find us on iTunes as well. And did I miss anything? Oh, follow us on Twitter.
Under the Dome PO1.
There we go. Thank you. Follow us on Twitter, and then of course check us out in New Orleans Saints group, Facebook group, where I'll be putting some history stuff up again this Thursday. I try and do it every Thursday, given it's the 50th anniversary of the team. Until next time, though. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, guys. We love you.